Dit is donderdag aand en dit beteken natuurlik dit is weer tyd vir die Losgemaal gedryf deur Betkousa. Baie welkom aan almal van julle wat saam kyk. Soos ek probeer sê het in die voorskou en die advertensies en sulke dinge, dit gaan so klein bietjie meer in die Britse taal wees vanaand, maar ek is seker julle ouens sal kan deurdruk en kan uithou. Ek dink ons wil 'n bietjie agter die kap van die byl kom wat daar aan die ander kant die waters gebeur in die Sesnasies en bietjie Andy van Scrum heeft gevra om ons te join vanaand saam met 'n bietjie van of 'n paar van sy vriende en ek is seker ons gaan lekker gesels oor wat daai kant aan die gang is. Ons het al gesien die resultate as 'n bietjie lekker rugby wat daai kant speel en natuurlik is daar wat nuus op die oomblik en ons sal praat oor die Sesnasies nuus, natuurlik die heel eerste ene. Ek wou vir julle 'n lekker klip gespeel het. Ek weet almal is natuurlik net so opgewonde soos hierdie Shark en dit het ook iets te doen met die noorde. Dit is 'n sekere Eyster the Gun Show Eben Etzebeth wat daar kom teken het. Hy gaan 'n bietjie rugby in Durban speel, man. Ek is seker almal is net so opgewonde soos ek. Henk, Christian, Rian, yes, dit is juis die manne wat dink ek saam met my opgewonde gaan wees. Christian, ons is opgewonde. Eben Etzebeth saam met sy goeie vriend Sia Kolisi. Maar nou, yes, kom ons bring hierdie man hier so in. And yeah, I've just been telling everyone, obviously the big news, we chatted about it earlier, or you mentioned the big one. There's some other news happening around the world.
I just heard the gun show, that's all I heard, and I knew it was Etzebeth, so it's all right.
Gun show, it's Sia's big mate. Obviously the Sharks are excited. I know that other side too long were a bit disappointed. He didn't get that much game time. Obviously it's not going to be that much more different for the Sharks. He's still going to be on Springbok duty often, but geez, it's a heck of a signing. And looking at the kind of pack the Sharks have with Oxenchae, Bongi and Benambe, Thomas the Tank, and then you put someone else into that engine room, and all of a sudden that's looking pretty formidable, eh?
Yeah, not too bad, and the backs aren't too bad either, are they? Let's be honest. So, no, it's a hell of a signing. It's probably the worst kept secret in South African rugby for the last few weeks. But I think it's worth noting here that a lot of people give people like Etzebeth a lot of stick for going abroad and take what they class taking the money. He's taking a huge pay cut because he's basically homesick, isn't he? He's missing his family. He wants to be close to them, be able to just fly from Durban down to Cape Town to see them. And I think it's huge for South African rugby as well. That I think this is the biggest name for me that's coming back. I know Vermeulen came back a few years back, but he sort of dotted around a bit, Vermeulen, didn't he? And then, but this for me is, I think, a huge signing for the Sharks and South African rugby.
And quickly on that one, I've seen a lot of comment, and obviously it depends on which camp you're in. But you've been a South African. I'm going to claim it like that. If you don't mind, for long enough to know the provincial lines and that kind of thing that happens in South Africa, we're very tutorial, if you can call it that. And as soon as the Bulls are buying up everyone's like, oh yeah, they're the real midget, and they're just buying trophies, and now you're getting some similar chips. I mean, what's your position on something like that? Obviously, it's nothing new for overseas clubs, and it's the way of the future. It's a business opportunity for these guys, but obviously we as sports people, still keep it close as this thing that shouldn't be touched. It's about honor and pride and all that. How do you see that whole argument at this stage?
Yeah, well, firstly, I don't think you can blame people for not going to Western Province, can you? I mean, it's not in a good state at the moment, so to go back to that club would be. But I think domestic South African rugby is in a very, very difficult spot at the moment, and Rassie's hand is probably going to start getting forced around things like salary cap and things like that, because you've gone down the franchise model where people have the ability to buy. They're privately owned. They've obviously got cash in their pocket. They've got the power of Rock Nation. They've got the power of Marco Mazzotti, who's just bought Saracens in a consortium with Francois Pienaar. So there's obviously lots of scope to develop the Sharks as well from the inside and from the outside there. So you've got to be careful now that you don't end up with two franchises. You end up with the Bulls and the Sharks just because they've got money. But like take people like Western Province out because they're politically in a terrible mess. The boardroom's awful. The Lions, I think, are just being left behind. Then you've got like a powerhouse like the Cheetahs who can't even get a competition to play in. So I would say Rassie's got a lot of work to do. So don't worry about him not being at stadiums. I think he's got a lot of work to do to try and keep a lot of people happy off the field. Now, a cash injection into South African rugby and domestic rugby is brilliant because it is dying a very slow and painful death. However, once they start playing in the Heineken Cup next year and actually playing in these European competitions, not just against the URC teams, that's when we really probably are in a better place to judge where they're at and whether South African domestic rugby is in a place where everybody wants it to be, because it needs to be a powerhouse in world rugby, doesn't it? No matter what competition it's in.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the only, the issue that you have is obviously guys like the Sharks and the Bulls need to, strengthen their squads if they want to be competitive and go to the Heineken Cup and things like that. But then you also get the, the gulf and the divide between the teams when you look at the Stormers and the Lions and people like the Cheetahs who are almost just falling further behind. But yeah, that's an argument for a different day. You've brought some guests along with you because if people don't know, I know you've gone full red, but I don't think you're supporting Wales on the show. It's still going to be England. So I'm going to give you a chance maybe to just bring in the first of your mates over here and give us an introduction there.
This man, the head of 3 Bod Rugby Group, has been great to me over the years, giving me a lot of opportunity to hone my skills as a presenter, and he's a really good friend of mine. Don't get fooled by the accent. He's actually Irish, only about 50.5%. He said 51, but 50.5. But this is Big Joe Shep, big friend of mine, and an incredible rugby brain. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Gooi man, dan dankie. There you go.
Joe, baie welkom op die show. Ons weet jy het baie uitgesien daarna om daarom so 'n paar Afrikaanse woorde te sê. So baie welkom op die Losgemaal.
Thank you. I was up today with the great Dan Fun Sale at Rugby Academy Islands. He was like testing me. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll keep to me 3 words, otherwise Andy will tell me off. There we go. Great to be on the show, guys. Thanks very much.
I only know 4, and then the other one's a swear word, so we'll just keep it at that, mate.
Something to do with Hansie, but listen, it's a bit of a South African joke at the moment. It's a Boertjie walks into a bar. There's an Englishman, an Irishman, and then you've got another guest for us, Andy.
Yeah, we got a Welshman. The BS rugby is ironic because that's actually his initials. It's not how he talks about rugby. It's all right, but no. Top man, top Welshman, proud Swansea City supporter. So, you can't have it all. But no, he's a top man. He's got his own YouTube channel there, BS Rugby, and you'll see him if you follow him on Facebook. He does daily updates. It's a really cool. I'm sure some of the subjects we're talking about later. He's already covered today in a few videos on Facebook. But yeah, please welcome Brandon Smith.
Thank you very much for having me on, gents. It's really good to be on, and what a day to talk about South African rugby and the Six Nations today. It's just like the rugby gods have looked down at us. So excited to chat.
I wouldn't call Chris Foy a god, but there you go.
Welcome to the Losgemaal. It's definitely the first time you'd have been on an Afrikaans rugby chat show, and hopefully it's not the last time, but have a good one. And then let's go into that one. Let's go into the big news. Of course, the South African faithful, especially if you're from Durban area, the big news is the gun show coming to Kings Park. But obviously the other news, and I suppose some people might think it's a little bit of clickbait happening there, but the deal has been done till 2025, but everyone's thinking there's some smoke on the horizon about whether Springboks are going to be playing their rugby. Maybe Joe, let's go in with you on that topic. Do you think Rassie's got some grand scheme going there to think that maybe it's time to we've started to put our toe up north, but are we going to move the whole body?
Well, we've been talking about this now for a couple of years. Everybody knows I followed Rassie when he was at Munster, saw what he did by putting himself, Jory Roux, on the Pro 14 board. Then they effectively brought Charles Krul in, who was the former CEO of Eastern Province, as the chief operating officer. Now, there's 3 massive SAFA key persons of influence to put on the board. Next thing we do, the Cheetahs, one of my favourite teams, I have to say, when they were in there, unceremoniously hoofed out. The Kings were always going to go because I think financially it was a nightmare. And so therefore that then paved the way. The political things we won't get into because there's a whole pile of things happening with the province and that sort of stuff. But the 4 provinces that they put in, interesting what you were just saying in your introduction there before about the difference between how you can pull aside some of the provinces and how there has to be an equalness, you know, for them staying in the URC. And we're already starting to see some of the SAFA franchises starting to creep up a little bit. So on face value, we'd say that our good friend here has just done a little bit of clickbait. Oh, look at the date there. So the 2025 is the run-out date for the Rugby Championship. Let's put it all together. The SAFAs will come up north and blah, blah, blah. And you've got a good story. That fits then with what Razzie is trying. So on face value, says clickbait. But Razzie, in what he's trying to do, I would never say, I'm talking myself every 30 seconds this afternoon. As I've been driving back, I've been talking to myself, yeah, that's going to happen. No, it's not. It's a good job I've got a split personality. Yeah, it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen because stranger things are happening. QVC are very bloody powerful. The natural order of the day, we've always spoke for years, should be that Rugby Europe, the second tier competition, should be the promotion and relegation. Don't want to get into the whole Italy thing. It's a done deal. Every country from Sri Lanka to Botswana to whatever should have the aspiration to go from their division that they're in across the world up to the highest echelons. The problem being the Six Nations is owned by the Six Nations Limited Company, and it would be like Turkey's voting for Christmas for Italy to vote themselves out. QVC now, own 1/7 of that as well. So 51-49, a bit like my sort of heritage. What do I go for? I actually, at this very moment in time, I actually think we are going to see something happen because there's just too many things falling into place from the Razzie bit at Munster all the way through. And it's just trickling through. And it's almost like closing the country down or whatever. So for me, I think there's something there to watch, and I'm going to be very, very interested to see what your thoughts are and the rest of our friends in South Africa and how that pans on. But for me, I think there's some legs, lads. I really do.
I'm not sure how often Joe has watched Botswana play rugby, but I think it's a bit of a pipe dream for them to go up to any level, really. But Brendan, let's ask you. I don't even want to go to Andy. I know he's going to have, Eddie Jones fearing the box coming to the Six Nations. I mean, that's going to be a tainted opinion right there. He's going to just want to block it straight away. Don't want to piss on his parade. So, Brendan, from your side, as Joe said, Rassie does have quite a bit of a connection up north. So if he's got a strong say in this whole move, and there's some power players involved, and you get the likes of Johan Rupert and TV licenses and things like that going, then all of a sudden, it's money causing. So maybe, is there a little bit of a truth to this rumor that things could go all the way and have the Springboks playing that way?
Yes, it could potentially be something that could happen. Absolutely. It's something that there's a lot of money in it. That's the first thing to say. Obviously, Italy aren't predominantly a rugby nation in comparison to South Africa. The market would be there. And as Joe rightly said, CVC have come in. They've invested a lot of money into the Six Nations. They've poured like 360 odd million into the competition. And to pour that amount of money in shows that you're quite serious and you're taking it seriously. But as Joe also said, each of the nations has a stake in the Six Nations. And so to be able to say to them, like, one of them has to relinquish that stake in probably the most lucrative competition in the world is not going to happen. I think the other thing that does give this story legs that I do not like particularly, but I think we have to mention it, is that, Italy aren't that great. They're not that great. And during the last 20 years or so, have they really improved all that much, or have they regressed? Also, the other big thing for me is when CVC came in, straight away, they gave 90 million to England Rugby. Just 90 million straight up, just like that. Just said, here you go, here's 90 million. And when they came in and did that, we're in the middle of the pandemic. And so if you're turning around to some unions and saying, look, we're going to get the Springboks involved, we're going to have massive crowds in in Pretoria, in Johannesburg, in Cape Town. It's going to be fantastic. He's going to sell the stadiums out. It's going to be super competitive all the time. And the unions have been struggling for money. I mean, it's something that some of them will really struggle to turn down. And the stories of Welsh regional rugby and the struggles that we have here and the finances have been well reported. I wouldn't be that surprised to see the unions at least having that discussion. So there's legs in it, absolutely. But I do believe there's quite a bit of clickbait going on. But it's difficult to really understand which is which in this situation.
Okay, Andy, I'll give you a little go, yeah, but I know you guys don't want us coming up there and taking something else from you. I mean, the French are already moving into that realm, and just taking the cake. But yeah, from your point of view, is this something, firstly, that you think is realistic in any way, and secondly, just, I mean, let's throw caution to the wind there. Is this something that you would like to see or not?
I think it's complete rubbish, garbage, and it's never going to happen for lots of reasons. I think kicking Italy out of their own competition, all right, we invited them in, but they've been there a good 20 plus years now. Their under 20s go and beat England on Friday night 6-0, which is usually something of a marker to show that there is something happening there coming through. Yes, their results at senior level are atrocious. They just can't score tries, can they? But that's for another day. The other thing, I think logistically it doesn't work, and I'm talking time-wise now. World Rugby are trying to build a global season. If they do this, that's it off the table. It's it completely off the table. And it also means South Africa will completely lose any attraction to a July tour down to South Africa, because England ain't going to want to do it. Wales ain't going to want to do it. Scotland ain't going to want to do it. And Ireland aren't going to want to do it, because they're going to play them in the seven nations. And then they're going to play them again in November, which means New Zealand and Australia will have to rotate, and then it leaves like 4 or 5 nations to battle out to try and go and play against New Zealand or Australia every year. It's just, when you sit down and actually put it down on paper, instead of some idiots with blazers who are just trying to make a few quid or euros or rand, which is constant in every single flipping rugby governing body in the world at the moment, then it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I don't fundamentally see how they can make it work in any way. And we've had this conversation, I think this is the 3rd time now. South Africa have signed a contract. They've released the date of how long they're going to stay in it. One was during COVID, and everyone went, oh, they're coming to the Six Nations. And about 2 weeks later, it all died down and it disappeared again. So for me, complete clickbait. Can't see it happening. Would I want it to happen? Not really. Not because I'm scared of playing South Africa, but I love big tests against South Africa. I love big tours down to South Africa. What does it do to the British and Irish Lions? And for the Six Nations who own the British and Irish Lions to vote to potentially devalue a tour to South Africa when we're not in COVID, I think would be a ridiculous business decision. And apparently they're all about money and making rugby good. So I don't know if I made that clear, but no, it ain't happening.
I didn't quite get your opinion on that one. It was a little bit blurred there, Andy. It was tough. Reading between the lines there, but yeah, as one of the comments said, I think the only way would be then to almost go back to your old traditional tours, then to do a, then all of a sudden a South Africa touring New Zealand becomes a heck of a entertaining, and a great prospect. But the only problem is, where does the rest of the rugby world go? That's been worked out quite nicely now with all, inbound and outbound tours, is, north versus south. If you muck around with that a little bit too much, then it's going to leave everyone wanting to play New Zealand at some stage. So it's
and my last comment on this is that it's again, it's a governing body trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, which will end up diluting or devaluing the Six Nations is perfect. I don't know if you boys have ever done an away trip. I've done Rome, I've done Wales, I've done Scotland, right? It's amazing because of the local rivalry and the fact that we're all neighbours. You then chuck in a guy from over the water, so to speak, or from another continent. It just And we might get used to it. It might be amazing. But again, it's like Super Rugby added the Japanese and the Argentinian franchises. Super 12 was the best domestic, let's call it domestic, I know it wasn't, but non-international tournament, hands down, in the world for years. And they diluted it because they wanted the money from Japan. I don't care if they say they're trying to grow the game out there. They didn't throw the resource to grow the game out there. It was all complete. And the same in Argentina. Nobody wants to go down to Argentina and play there. You can see it. You can see it, what they're doing. I'm sure the night out afterwards is brilliant. But as usual, just leave it. Just leave it as it is. Everyone loves it. Enjoy it.
Oh, wow, Super 12 being the best competition. I've got that on tape now, Andy. So we're gonna be
it's not now.
We're gonna be using using that one. Okay, listen, guys. I think let's move on to the main event itself. Obviously, the toast of the town at the moment, and probably fortunately we thought it might be tough with the language barrier, so we didn't get a Frenchie on here, and we also. Probably would have skyrocketed off female viewership by 100%, but we had to bypass that one, so we stuck with the rest of us. And let's throw this little one on there. Hopefully it goes on. And they are top of the log, and the rest is pretty much up for grabs. And then just before we look at everyone's team itself, maybe just Joe, I'm gonna throw you into this one. I know Andy got passionate about his nights out in Rome, but just the position of Italy itself. I mean, as Andy mentioned, it's great seeing the youngsters come through. So you've got to think that there is a future for Italy. I know a lot of the South Africans or this side of the water, the media, and what you see in social comments is, listen, Italy have had their shot. They bloody celebrating when they don't come last, and it's they haven't made it use in 20 odd years. I don't know how long they've been in the Six Nations, but I think there is a future. It's starting to look like there could be a turn happening for Italy, and now is possibly not the time to get them out, because they're still a challenge, especially playing them in Rome.
Yeah, I think excuse me, I think for Italy it's a perennial problem. It's a football country, and when Conor Shea went in there, obviously, and Keane Crowley, they've been trying to build, but they don't have the same academy structures per se. They have some centres of excellence, as Edward Palmer as they are now, are trying to develop more and catch up Benetton. Let's not forget who won the Northern Hemisphere URC, what's the Rainbow Cup last year? An Italian team. So, and then you see the youngsters coming through now, and the last 2 seasons they've been no slouches. And I think there's some real development coming. But you've got to caveat it with the fact that it is always going to be marginal. And I think thereby lies the problem. I wouldn't want to... I go back to the simplicity of it again. I think everything goes in cycles. I think by 2025, I think this next generation of youth coming through in the next 12, 18 months, that's going to transpose its way through. And as long as they can keep building on that, and because we all know it comes in foundations. Now, it starts at grassroots level, it builds into centre of excellences or academies, whatever you want to call them, that then transposes its way through. They've only got, like Scotland, they've only got 2 regional, provincial type sides, and then into the test team as well. So I don't want to see them go. I want to see them naturally develop, and I'm going to be keen. But come 2024, if there's been no movement and this next crop of youngsters come through, there's nowhere left for them to go. And therefore, I think that's why clickbait or whatever is being touted around now, because in 22 years, I think it is this year, isn't it? 20 or 22 years that they've been in. 18 wooden spoons, Brown. I think your stats are, I'm not a stats man. But an awful lot of the results don't belie don't belie how well they've played, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if you've got 18 out of 20 or 22 years of wooden spoons, you cannot keep that going. And I think this is their last opportunity to see how they can build in the next 2 years. So it's disappointing, but look, they fronted up against France in round 1, and we're going to get to that. And then the whole thing with England, and I will come on to that as well. But there's no consistency there, I think, is the main problem for me. And I'm really hoping that the next 2 years coming out of COVID, with the youth starting to come through now, with them building more grassroots and centres of excellence in Italy, that at last we will see something. But I will finally caveat that again. If it doesn't change by 2024, the legitimate question has to be asked, do we now change? And how that changes them, because you can't keep going forever.
Absolutely, I think that's a fair point right there. I mean, I'm honestly going to tell you, I made a fair bit of coin through my Betco's guys on backing Italy on a handicap in the first half, as they always seem to put up a fight in the first 40, and then eventually the wheels come off, and it's almost like from the get-go, it's just can Italy keep it tight instead of can Italy realistically win the game. Brendan, just before we move off Italy, just your opinion on their future, and do you see them turning the curve and being competitive in the Six Nations, or always just trying to avoid the wooden spoon?
It's a difficult one with Italy. I have a soft spot for Italy because their scrum half, Stephen Varney, was born in Pembrokeshire in Wales. So I have a soft spot for them. And I think he's a hugely talented player. Again, Italy seems to finally be on the right path.
Brendan, just quickly by that rationale, I should have a soft spot for half of the Scottish team.
Are there any Scots watching?
Three quarters, mate, 3/4.
But yeah, I think Italy finally are getting it right now. I think they are getting it right with giving these youngsters a go, similar to what France did. I'm not comparing the quality of players coming through in Italy with those in France, but I think that they are getting it right now. They were in the past, they'd go for, who remembers Mark Gower playing at 10 for Italy? They're trying to get these players in. I think they're getting it right now. We're seeing players also go abroad and playing at high levels, like with Bietjie playing at Montpellier. It's just going to take time. And Kieran Crowley's come in, he's trying to shore up the defence, but then they're lacking in attack now, which last year they looked okay in attack, but were lacking in defence. So it seems they're struggling to get the balance there. But as Joe said, against France, they fronted up. Against England, they were disappointing, yes, but they were always going to get bullied up front in that game. So I think, as Joe said, 2 years, give them at least 2 years, give this crop of youngsters an opportunity, because this is the first time I felt like, okay, there's an identity to the way they're playing. Kieran Crowley's proven that he can get the best out of Italian players at Benetton. Yet the step up to international rugby is a lot bigger. But 22 years now it's been. So if you were going to say, we're going to open it up, we're going to say, okay, Italy are going to go, Georgia going to come in, let's say, for instance, you got to give Georgia the same amount of time. And then that's closing off the competition then to other countries coming in. So it's very complicated. But I have been impressed by Italy a little bit. And again, that win for the under-20s is a great win, and Benetton doing better. There are little shoots coming through now, but is it enough? It's difficult to say.
Okay, Andy, it's time to move on. I know you're going to be clouded by your evenings in Rome and enjoying pasta there. So let's move on. It's time to represent your side. We saw them pretty much laughing. Sorry, probably lost me there. All of them locked up in the middle of the table. So just looking at these 2 rounds, Andy.
Sorry, from an England specific point of view.
From England's perspective, how do you getting?
Okay, cool. I'm more than happy actually. Apart from one really, well, I mean, Luke Cowan-Dickie, if he's not buying those boys beers for a very long time, I know he did one of those cringy public apologies, but. Mate, professional rugby player. Anyway, I've moved on. So if it wasn't for that, we'd be 2-0. And the other thing is, right, everyone's attacking Eddie Jones, everyone's attacking England. Mate, he's used this opportunity to go, I'm going to blood loads of new players. I'm going to try loads of new combinations. He's got about 9 or 10 players injured, right? And then He's got Manu coming back. That's the one thing Marcus Smith needs, is Manu or a big ball carrier outside him, just to give him another option, which is scary. But like even in the last game, he starts Jamie George and Dombrandt instead of Cowan-Dickie and Simmons. He now knows, I hope, that Jamie George and Dombrandt are his starters, and Simmons and Luke Cowan-Dickie are cringeworthy finishers, as he likes to call them. So he's tried all these different combinations out. We're not in the same place that Ireland are in. But just remember, Ireland are in the same place that we were 2 years ago, and everyone wanted Andy Farrell sacked. So he's doing all right. And then if you look back now, France, okay, when we played them in the Autumn Nations Cup in 2020, I think it was, the Autumn Nations Cup, if I'm right, they had to play the final with basically their under-20s against England and should have beaten us. Right, we had a full gun team out, and they should have beaten us. Went to extra time. Farrell was missing penalties. Right, here's some of the players who are in that France under-20 team: Bryce Doolan, Raka, Moafana. Nobody knew these boys at this time. They'd gone back to back with the under-20s. I get it. Villiers, Matthew Jalabert, Cameron Woki was the first time we'd seen Cameron Woki on the international stage. Sekou Makalu, who's going to be a huge player for France. The list goes on. We're doing that now. We're blooding those players, and if they don't make it up to that next level, it's cool, because Eddie Jones is asking questions after questions after questions. And the other thing, I've always been on this. I hate losing. I hate losing to anybody. But if we take 1 year out of every cycle to do exactly what Eddie Jones is doing right now, I'm cool with that. I know we lost in the final. I'm on the wrong show to bring this up, but consistently. Like, look what happened. 2016 was great for us. 2017, 2018 were terrible. But Eddie Jones learned so much about the squad and the personalities that he want, that we played some stunning rugby against Australia and New Zealand. Yes, it fell apart in the final, and I'd love to watch that every week. But what the lessons that are being learned is that Wales tend to go through a generation of great players, and then it drops off. Ireland go through a generation of great players, and it drops off because they keep playing the same players week in, week out, which leaves Ireland in a great position as we speak, right? 100% one of the best teams in the world. Thanks, Hank. Much appreciated. One of the best teams in the world. However, there's always a drop-off. And are they 100% certain of what's coming through to then keep that consistency? So when they hit a World Cup, they might actually get past a quarter-final.
I must say that Manu Tuolangi, if he comes back at 12, I have to agree, Andy, that'll be just something amazing. As you say, next to Marcus Smith is a little bit, not physically imposing, but he's a bit of a magician. If you've got that solid 12, I mean, it's just it's bliss playing, having that next to you.
Yeah, and Manu's as dangerous without the ball as he is, because he drags 2 or 3 defenders in. If then Smith's hit. Even if Smith hits him or he plays it behind, Slade coming around on that arc, or Ellis Genge, see that pass at the weekend, on that arc, it makes us incredibly, incredibly dangerous from an attacking perspective. So, I hate losing. We shouldn't have lost that Scotland game. We should have won that by 20 points. We left a lot of points out there, and fair play to Scotland. They took their chances, defended unbelievably well. So I'm not taking anything away from Scotland. You can only play what's in front of you. But we should have won that. We should be 2-0 after trialing loads of players. So what's there not for me to be happy about?
Mm-hmm.
Joe, from your side, a little bit less clear cut. It was convincing first time out, second time. I mean, that was going to be the big test. Can Ireland go back to back? They've obviously proven that they can topple a big dog, but can they keep producing week in and week out? And I think that's the kind of thing that everyone wants to see. If you want to be a realistic, shot at winning the World Cup, you got to be able to produce it 4 or 5 weeks consecutively, and that's something that Ireland have lacked. They've toppled the All Blacks and toppled the Box, but can they do it week in and week out? And that was, especially in the first half, it was a massive fail, but geez, they showed a heck of a lot of mettle in the seconds.
Yeah, very much. I think the first half we were taught a lesson. I mean, supposedly between Ireland or the Box for who has the world's top front row. clearly I'm going to say Islanders, but the French managed the game very, very well, and they managed Ireland, and they fronted up strong, and we didn't react to that. We didn't really know what to do. I thought Mac Hansen's, the first try by our good friend was marginally forward in my opinion, but there you go. we failed to know what, if you've got Entermac and Dupont and all of these people, you know what they're going to do. You know where they're going to be. So if you leave any sort of a gap, especially in those first few minutes, you're going to get punished. So and we were, and then the Mac Hansen bit was almost a saving grace. It just sort of all, French mistake there. 4 players stood still, bit of indecisiveness, but fair play to Hansen, running at speed, following the ball, situational awareness around him, through 4 guys to take it was absolutely superb. But overall, we were poor. Our set piece was poor. The line out was poor. That then came on into the second half where we bottled it and took 3 points instead of going for the line out and looking for the maul. So that's what we should have done. But I think that we felt at that point that the set piece wasn't working. The line out wasn't really working at all. And although it was effectively the line out that gave us both of our tries in 45th and 49th minute from Van der Fleer and Jameson Gibson Park. So why we didn't go for that, but we were rattled. It wouldn't have made any difference for me if Sexton had been on. We still would have been beaten. The score made us look quite good. Yes, we battled back, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how tries come. But the tries came from a little bit of individuality from Van der Fleer and from Jameson Gibson Park on his little snipe to get through. But the first half, I think, outside of that, we did good and showed some mettle to come back. I think it was 7 or 8 penalties out of the 10 we got were all in the first half. So the set piece didn't really work. We were bullied up front and in the pack. We didn't close France down. France aren't even the full finished team yet. They've got some class for Gallic individuals who just, when they go from that to that, and then they're through. And look, Villiers, Jesus, that boy for a winger, he's all over the park. He's been my standout player so far, not just because he scored 3 tries in the first game, but because he's all over the park. His situational and awareness, it's a bit like Marcus Smith. Difference between Smith and going off track slightly, difference between Smith and Finn Russell. Marcus Smith has a temperament and a maturity, and I think that's what we didn't have that against France, and France outmanaged us and really should have been a lot more points ahead. But I would take it. A losing bonus point away to France and coming back, however you come back and just keep yourself hanging in there, is enough that keeps us in the competition. I fear France are going to come a cropper when they go to Scotland. And I'll give me your betting site, mate, and I'll probably put a little wager on with you. I just think that if France don't travel well, they're not the full finished thing there, and they, as we showed against them in the second half, we can rattle them. They didn't know what to do, and that's something, especially defensive wise, that they'll be working on strongly this week. So, but it's Cup Rugby, lads. It's why we love the Six Nations.
Yeah,
it ebbs and flows, and it's not the fast flowing offloading stuff. We're seeing more of that now, across the piece, and we're seeing players, the Genge bit, James George was just sublime, but overall it was good classic Cup Rugby. We got battered in the first half, we came back, we were kept in the game by Mac Hansen's try, came back in the second half, bollocksed up really that 3 points instead of going for the line, and then the kick away in the last moment. I mean, first of all, France with 90 seconds to go box kicked it away. Box kick, Jesus.
They love messing up right in there.
Right. Why would you give the ball away in the last 2 minutes? I know it's hard to keep hold of in the last 2 minutes, but when you're that close, and then the ball comes to us, and then we kick it, and it just wasn't meant to be. But a great game of rugby, and I'm pretty content where we are at the moment. But I think we'll win the Grand Slam. The Triple Crown. But I don't think there'll be a Grand Slam winner this year.
Joe, just quickly, sorry to jump in. Hank, my new 32-12 best mate there, mate, the year is 2047, and Andy's still getting that on a text daily basis, right? So he says there, Ireland missed Sexton. I don't think they missed him on the pitch. I thought Carberry, but the last few minutes, with that decision? Is that where they missed Johnny Sexton?
Well, possibly. If you remember back to that 87 phases or whatever, and the great drop kick a couple of years ago in France that Johnny did, 2 minutes to go. Jordan that 87 phases, Johnny Sexton put a outrageous kick across to Earls, I think it was, to come back in, and people forget that. So maybe that's the same thing. But had he been there in the last couple of minutes, the steady thing down a bit, maybe. But I'm not convinced. Joey Carberry, first Six Nations game, everything that the young lad's been through, everything the fella's been through, now coming back, I thought he held himself up well. I thought he played well overall. I don't think Johnny being on there would have made any more of a difference. But it does give us a leadership question about who our skipper should be. Ian Henderson, I think, when he's on the park, is a natural skipper. And he's coming back now, obviously, from Ulster. He's coming back now through injury, and we'll see more of him playing. I think we'll see him start against Italy. But no, I don't think Johnny, honestly, would have made a difference on the day. It was just that sort of game, to be honest.
Brandon, I've heard positive things from Andy, positive things from Joe, but somewhere along the line, obviously it's going to be positive out of France at the moment. So I don't know, someone's got to be less positive. But I mean, you did beat or chip up the Scots, who were the high flying Scottish. I mean, it was a bit of a shocker first week out, but a Welsh team probably in a bit of a transition phase, or a bit of a, I don't know, unknown stage at this stage, and then beating Scotland. So again, there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there is. If we touch first on that Irish performance, that was not great at all. It was it was a painful watch. Josh Adams in the centre. Gosh, flashbacks. Do not want to think about that because that just did not work. Against Ireland, look, they were brilliant. Ireland were fantastic. They were so physical. They were dominant. They won the collision. They won the breakdown. We couldn't get near them. Nick Tompkins at centre to cover his own position and cover Josh Adams' position. I read a stat that Nick Tompkins made the most tackles of a back in any Six Nations game ever, which is just ridiculous. He made 21 tackles as a back. So he not only had to cover his own position, he had to cover Josh Adams' positioning as well, which was a little bit crazy. But in that game, when the Irish forwards would drop the ball or they'd do a knock-on, we'd get the opportunity to counter. You could see those glimpses of what Pivac was trying to do. It was very, very rare. We didn't see it often, but there were little glimpses. Against Scotland, made a few changes. Owen Watkin came in, who I thought was absolutely fantastic. Dan Biggar somehow played with one leg, and he was brilliant throughout the match. And clearly, playing out the Principality, obviously, it is a huge plus. The crowd was there in full voice. And going into the game, I didn't expect to win, but I wanted a performance. That was the big thing for me. I wanted to understand what Pivac was really trying to do, because although crazy to think that we won the Six Nations last year, I think it's very difficult to identify what Pivac's game plan truly was during the course of the games. We were fortunate with red cards, moments in games, Louis Rees-Zammit having a magical moment. But against Scotland, in that opening, I'd say between 10 and 30 minutes, I finally saw it. I finally saw the way we're trying to play. I understood what Pivac was trying to do. In the second half, we had to change our game. The rain was absolutely tipping down. We had to control the game a little bit better. But finally, we're beginning to see what Pivac is trying to do. Again, as you correctly said, we're in a transition phase. We have so many injuries. I mean, I don't think Alan Wynne is the biggest miss. I think someone like a Josh Navidi, the work he does at the breakdown, someone like that, we're massively missing him. But a lot of players have stepped up and had opportunities to show what they're able to do. I mean, Tane Basham, where's he come from over the last 6 months? He is absolutely incredible. So on the whole, it's okay. We got England next, which is always tasty, and I'm sure Andy's looking forward to that, and remember Scott Williams ripping the ball and a grubber kick and catching it. But I don't think about that every day. But
it's great that you've had one moment in the last 20 years, mate.
Rugby World Cup 2015.
I'm pleased for you.
Rugby World Cup 2015.
I was there that day. Let's move on.
Wales 30, England 3. I don't think about it every day. No, definitely not. But I think we are in a transition phase. Again, England is going to be a really tough game, and if Manu Tuolangi does start that, I'm really worried about him playing in the centre alongside Marcus Smith. But again, World Cup in 2 years, that's got to be the aim. And people start talking about Wales's wooden spoon, could get that. That's obviously stopped now. So transition phase, got to be patient, but there are some positives for sure. And yeah, we look forward to facing the old enemy.
Lads, whilst just change this up again. Okay, there we go. Listen, whilst I have you guys on there, two things that I want from you. Just I'm going to take a little bit of a ad break coming up now, but afterwards, two things. Firstly, a couple of questions that I think some of the South Africans would like to hear from non-South African supporters. So I'd ask you a couple of questions there, just about what you think of some players or our game, and then start having a think. I'd like a on-form top 5 teams in the world at the moment. We're leading into the World Cup, so I just want to kind of little feel, just a tester. I mean, you can elaborate a little bit, but yeah, let's just quickly. I'll probably spitball myself. I'm not sure about my top 5, but yeah, you got a 30 seconds or so to have a think about that one.
Whatever it takes, whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
Oh my word, if I do that again. Het is tyd vir die losgeluk met hier op die Losgemaal. I've had a shocker the last 2 weeks, lads. This is the section of the show where I try and just do this. Try and pick a winner for our audience here, and I've gone to 0-2 the last 2 weeks, backing the Sharks 1 week and going for the double with France and the Scots. Can you believe it? Sorry there, Brendan. I didn't have faith, and that came up short. This week, I'm going to the Currie Cup, of course. I'm going to go against Griquas and Kimberley. That's always a tough gig for any team, but I've got faith in Western Province. You can get them at 13-10. Western Province to beat Griquas at home. I've got Netling Fouché returning at tight end prop, and Kate Voliter, I know he's playing at 15, but he's coming back for Western Province. So at 13-10, I'm backing the big union. There's plenty of positive vibes in the Western Province at the moment. They might not be absolutely thrilled about the Eben news coming to Durbs, but I think everything's on the up and up in Cape Town at the moment, despite off-field happenings. So back Western Province to win that one. WP vir die wen 13-10. That's my tip. Hopelijk is dit nie 3-0 this week nie. Hopefully we can turn things around. Okay, lads, let's move. That was brought to you by Bet.co, by the way. Get involved there with the lads. They've been pretty good in sponsoring this show, and also on Super Brew. Every time, just have a look. Losgemaal will be involved in Super Brew, and some great prizes from Bet.co are up for grabs there. I'm pretty much getting my ass whipped on that front, but anyways, moving on. Yeah, let's go to Joe. Joe, listen, everyone in South Africa, we've obviously taken quite a lot of flack, and Rassie hasn't been shy. You know, he's actually poked the bear a little bit. So maybe just I'd leave Brendan the other question. So Joe, I'm going to ask you on the player, or let's just say the game plan front and the whole attitude of Rassie Erasmus, or you know what he goes about. He's got zero fear of kind of upsetting World Rugby. Oh, let's stay away from the game plan. Let's just go on Rassie Erasmus and his tactics. Do you think it's something that just detracts a little bit from the team, something that it's a distraction, or do you think it's something that's calculated from his side, and he's kind of like, rather focus on me and not focus on game plan against the box?
He's an entertainer. He is a very astute businessman. He's a very astute individual. I thought he let himself down, in my opinion, on that video. Bearing in mind he was right in some aspects of it, but the way he went about it, but it's all part of the theatre that is Rassie. You know, Johan, he is a man who knows exactly what he's doing. I go back to the Munster thing. This has been a cold, clever, calculating thing that he has done all the way through. Some things have worked, some things haven't necessarily worked. I think if he ever gets his autobiography out, then the whole thing about the cheaters then maybe come out, you know, other things be happening behind the scenes as well. But one man can only, if you look at what he's controlled and manipulated and achieved in the time from going to the Northern Hemisphere and from building all those things. So I go back to Munster. What was his aim there? His aim was to put roots down, to learn all about the Northern game inside out, putting 3 key people into the Pro 14 Rugby board, then coming, dismantling what Saru had put up there, getting himself into the key position that he did, then putting the new 4 franchise, and it continues, and we haven't seen all of this happening yet. So for me, I think that I was talking yesterday to the great Peter Rosso, and I was saying to him that for me, the difference between nations is South Africa has to fight for everything you have ever achieved. Not getting into politics or finances or anything like that, but over the years, it's been a country which has been pilloried, pushed aside, ignored, welcomed back in, loved, bits and bits, and it's all sorts. The Kiwis are naturally born into rugby, and that's in their DNA, and that's all they bloody know. They don't have to fight; it just comes bloody naturally. We hate them. Oh, bloody hell, why are you so good? But that's the way they are. For the rest of us, you know, it's bits and pieces. For South Africa, what Rassie has done is positioning you and the people in South Africa overall. Forget the politics that are going on with Western Province and other different places and the cheaters going and finance. He is positioning South Africa perfectly to be able to continue that growth. So the 4 franchises have now gone in. He's now got them to agree to that from next year they can qualify, which they will do, for the Challenge Cup and for the Champions Cup. And then within 5 years, one of those is going to win one of those competitions without a shadow of a doubt. How successful do you want one individual to be? And it's almost like there's flashes of brilliance of him. You can see what he's doing. I'd love to have been a documentary for 5 years following him to find out exactly what was going on behind the scenes. Because it's like an iceberg. The bit you see of Rassie above the water, Jesus, the amount of stuff he's doing behind. So for me, I just think it's fascinating. And the man fascinates me. And he is now on my list to have dinner with at some stage. So, Andy, you're our man on the ground over there. Facilitate that.
I would have said I'd ask Hierdie, but he's persona non grata at the moment. So let's just move on from that. But I think just the one thing on that, Joe, is you said that we had to fight for everything, but I actually think the South African mentality is almost the case of they want to make it like it's with the underdog and you have to scrap and you have to fight for everything. It's as soon as it's too easy and you're the favorite and you're the front runner that things actually get tough. It's almost we paint ourselves into that box if we don't get put there ourselves. So yeah, it's something we embrace. Brendan, from your side, what I like to do is just get a perception, because I mean obviously we're stuck in the middle of it, so we don't know what the opinion is elsewhere. Lately, I'm hoping this is your area of expertise, so I'm just going to throw it your way. Is Lukhanyo Am? I've heard some varying opinions on him. Locally, some people were like, "Oh, this guy is, he's being pushed in there, and all of a sudden he's one of the best in the world." So, just from a neutral point of view, do you see him as in that conversation at the moment, and where he is in his game to be one of the leaders in the world game at outside centre?
For sure, yeah, definitely. He's one of the best in the world. You'd put him up there with the likes of Gary Ringrose. Who else? Can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. But yeah, Lukhanyo Am is a brilliant centre. That partnership that he had with Damien Diolande in the World Cup, but then in the Lions tour as well, was so successful. He's so comfortable defensively, but also going forward. He's got a great boot on him as well. He absolutely is in the top 5 outside centres in the world for sure. There's no doubt about it. And what we saw with the Sharks at the start of the URC was they were struggling a little bit, couldn't quite get over the line in games, were hanging in there for about 50 minutes and then struggling towards the end. But when Khaleesi came back into the side, completely changed the way that the team played and completely changed their fortunes. And they sadly got a win at the Ospreys, which really hurt They managed to get a win there, and they built on from there. And I think he's a fantastic player. And I think there's an argument to be said that his partnership with Diolande at the time, when they were playing consistently together, was the best centre partnership in the world, alongside Guy Ringrose and Henshaw. So I think they're absolutely brilliant. And I wouldn't understand someone saying that he's not up there with some of the best in the world.
I think let me just jump in. I think actually his partnership with Mapimpi is more impressive than his partnership with Diolande. And if anybody wants an example of how good Lukhanyo Am is, apart from the amazing try scored at the weekend, which has done the rounds, watch the pass he delivers for the try that Mapimpi scored at Twickenham in November. Just look at the way Lukhanyo Am on full speed takes the ball somewhere around here, up here, and then throws an inch perfect pass. That's an almost impossible pass to throw. So if anyone thinks he's just pace and bludgeon, I mean, that man has got a skill set to make some dollar.
I think to me it's a couple of things. It's firstly is we've seen a little bit of the flash. You saw against New Zealand that behind the back flick pass happening there. So he's definitely got that. But something that's a dying breed at the moment is some common sense or some smarts in a player, and that was that one moment, I think it was against New Zealand as well, where there was a box kick and he was actually pulling players back. I mean, he literally had the presence of mind to know that you guys are going to be ahead of the ball. He's a thinking player, and that to me, I mean, you don't see that every day. And lastly, it's just the selflessness. I mean, that try in the World Cup as well, where he could have scored himself, but it was just give it. It's his natural instinct to create and to distribute, which these days is becoming less and less common. And the lastly, from the South African view, is just the whole game plan saga. People have been either very much listen as long as you get results, and the others have been but we're playing. We're killing rugby and all that sorts of things. From your side, I mean, especially because I think England are transitioning to a more total game, especially with a guy like Marcus Smith playing there. They've got a few pacey backs and some Lucy's that play some, and I mean Itoje himself, he plays a loose running game. Do you see something there in that argument where you'd prefer to watch a game that entertains on the attacking front, or is there just something about that different styles? I mean, that's what makes rugby beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, look, just to throw it back to Sunday's game, I think most people would rather England won 66-33 than 33-0. But there's a beauty in nilling somebody. I think there's a huge beauty in keeping an international team out. My personal frustration with the way South Africa played against the Lions and before that, yes, it's horrible to watch. I don't like it, I'll be honest. But my issue with it, actually, as a complete rugby man, is that you have the most amazing backline and you choose not to use it until you're in the 22. And I think people ignore the Twitter dickheads, right? People in rugby, people like Brandon who watches it week in, week out, Joe and everyone in Joe's 3 bloke stable that he's got there. I think most of them will say, you've got Mapimpi, Colby. I think Cheslin Colby I think it was the first test against the Lions, not a single South African passed to him. That's absolutely insane. And that's where the frustration comes from, is that you and then you start playing in the last 20 minutes. So there's the argument that you see the game out and then you start opening up. I just don't understand why you don't do it for 80 minutes. I think you'd smash people. And the issue I've got with the way you're playing as well, if that was England, exactly the same set of players, like whatever, is that you're leaving too many games up to the lap of the gods. How many games has South Africa won or lost in the last minute in 2021? England, they lost. New Zealand, you won one, lost one. Australia, you lost one in the last kick of the game. I think it's about 5 or 6 games that has gone down to the 80th minute. Why? You're playing not to lose rather than playing to win. And my frustration is the players you've got and you're not using them the right way. You're not even using Diolande the right way, in my opinion. You use him as this crash centre. If you see that boy play for Munster, he's got hands, he's got a step. He sat Gary Ringrose. Was it Ringrose or Lama? I think he sat Lama down against Munster against Leinster. He didn't know where to go. He just fell over. He's got a bigger skill set than you're using him, and that's my frustration with the way South Africa plays. Apart from it's dog shit to watch, but yeah.
Well, I mean that's a good example. Like even a guy like Andre Esterhuizen now at Harlequins, it's we used him exclusively to just bash other guys, and he still does that side as well. But I mean, every now and again you see some actually deft handling from the guy, and you're like, geez, where's that come from? So it is frustrating, and I think from a personal point of view, I think maybe a lot of people don't feel is, 18 months from the World Cup, Rassie Erasmus didn't have a choice. He was like, listen, I'm going to base this on defense. I'm going to base this on a good tactical kicking game, and this is what we're going to win the World Cup with. That's our only option. But now the question is, 2 years down the line, are we developing on that? Are we saying, okay, listen, we've got the D down. Let's start working on the attack. And that to me is the big thing is, we're still a little bit stagnant. And as you say, Andy, as soon as you're at the top of the tree, it's almost like our game plan is you're bringing other teams back into it by just kicking 50-50 contestables. It's, you're making it, you're getting guys the option to just catch the ball and run 70 meters and score a lucky try or something like that, or make it a referee decision when, you are the better team and you fancy to win it. You probably don't need to do that. Control it up front and get some of those creative backs of yours into the game and, get Mapimpi the ball. He's so hungry for a try. He's a bunner like that. So it's, that's my view on it. So it's nice, just to test you guys. But now it's the big question. I mean, I'll get you guys on again as we move closer to the World Cup, but let's do a little test here. Just, I know it's a tough one. Brendan, I'm going to throw you to the Wolves first up. I know you're going to have to sneak Wales in there, I suppose, but give me a top 5 as you have it. I think just quickly as a caveat, as Joe said, is personally I think it's the most open world rugby has been in a heck of a long time. I think it's pretty much you got 6 or 7 teams that at home you'd probably fancy them to beat pretty much anyone, not even just on their day, but most of the time, I'd give Ireland and England and South Africa and New Zealand that you'd probably any team in the world would lose or won't be fancied to win playing there. And then you got the others, I mean, as well as showed this weekend, and Scotland isn't going to be easy at home. So yeah, it's actually very, very tough. So good luck with this one, Brendan. Have a go.
Thanks for dropping me in first on this one. It's really nice that. Okay, I'll go from 5th down to 1st. In 5th, I want to put Wales. My heart says Wales, but I'm not going to put us in there now. Scotland 5th. I'll go England 4th because they're in a slight bit of transition. 3rd, I will go. Andy's
got them winning the World Cup, and you've got them at 4th.
I don't actually think I can put Scotland in there. Actually.
I haven't. We'll get to that in a minute.
I'm going to take Scotland out, so I'll go England 5th. Right, England 5th. I'll go All Blacks 4th. I'll go South Africa 3rd. Ireland 2nd. France 1st. I think that's what I'm going to go for. I can't put Wales in there. I'd love to put us in there, but I think we just about make the top 10 at the minute, to be honest. So that's how I would put it, because the thing is, usually you put the All Blacks, of course, but in the Rugby Championship, we saw that South Africa could beat them and, could give them a good game. Australia gave them a good game. Yeah, I just think that it's got to be that top 5, I think. So England, the All Blacks, South Africa, Ireland and France, I think.
Fair enough. I see Christian, our regular viewer, he's got New Zealand completely nowhere. So I think that might be a bit of a He's a bit upset at the Kiwis at the moment. Joe,
Four
have you
Northern
got?
Hemisphere in there, though. 4 Northern Hemisphere in there, Christian.
That's
Nice one.
insane. I mean, imagine that 3 or 4 years ago, Andy. That's crazy. Joe, have you got your 5 sorted?
Yeah, I think in no particular order. First of all, you've got to have. I think the order that they're currently in on world ranking. World rankings currently, so you've got New Zealand, France, South Africa, England, and Ireland. So in from the top downwards, based on where everybody's transitioning, based on how things are now, I think 1 is France, 2 are South Africa, 3 are Ireland, 4 are England, and 5 are the All Blacks, based on how things are currently at now. Emerging nations, watch 2 emerging nations coming through from the 2nd and 3rd tier, Portugal and Romania. There you go, top 2.
There we go. Ballsy, I like it. I'm going to have to rewatch this, and then I'll make a nice little template, and I'm going to put it out there on Twitter and be like, Brendan, Joe, I'm going to be like, this is where, there we go. We're going to put it public. So, Andy, fair warning.
Oh, mate, I'm used to the abuse, so it doesn't really matter what I say, to be honest with you. I get it, but this is the order. 5th at the moment. I'll be nice. I'll put New Zealand at 5th. South Africa 4, England 3, Ireland 2, France by far and away in the box seat. Only as good as your last game, boys. Just remember Twickenham. And France will win the World Cup as well, unless they do an absolute bottle job in the final. But I'll tell you what's going to happen in that, without going too far. That's first knockout stage when France or New Zealand play South Africa is going to be huge. Winner of that might well be the winner, but I think France will win the World Cup.
I think the big thing is everyone has said it's a new generation French team, but thus far, that moment that the box kick balls up or the kick out balls up that they've had, it still hasn't shown that they've lost that French fragility, if you want to call it that. There's still that little bit of and I mean, Joe mentioned it earlier, he expects them to chip over someone in the Six Nations, and that's the kind of thing that you can't afford in the World Cup. That's the thing that's bugged them in the past. So let's just put that on the ice. I actually think Rian's got a good one going here. It's I'd probably just swap. I'll be honest. I don't think South Africa play the total game at the moment. Either France at 1, probably have New Zealand if you play them at home at 2nd, South Africa, England, and Scotland. So that's the way. Where's Ireland? No, actually they've missed Ireland there. No, I'd pop Ireland in there at number 4, ahead of Scotland. So that's my one, and then move. I don't know, one of them. I'm going to have to think about this and let you guys back. I asked a very difficult question. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me on the show. It was the most English I've spoken in a heck of a long time, but it was great catching up. And as I said, I'd like to involve you guys every now and again as we build up towards the World Cup and really, keep our finger on the pulse there about what's happening in everyone's neck of the woods. So thanks so much for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us on, Hein. Much appreciated.
Great stuff.
Thank you very much.
Great. Can I just say, great to be doing this in the wake of the sadness of Jacques' passing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers, thanks so much, and thanks for everyone for joining us. And Andy, lastly, don't worry, mate. I'd remember to keep giving you a chirp every now and again, just on behalf of my old mate who isn't here to do it anymore. So don't you worry, man. We'll get this thing.
Mate, if you're going to do it as much as him, it's got to be every hour on the hour. It's usually a meme, a GIF, some disgraceful stuff, or just direct 32-12. I'm immune to it. It's fine.
Cheers, everyone. We'll chat again. Have a good one.